Okay, this time I will show a game that I played against a human opponent, and this was on the internet. I was black and the opening was the Budapest gambit. Let's go straight to the action. White's first move was d4, knight f6, c4, and here the game of course can transpose into all kinds of openings, the Queen's Indian, Nimso Indian, and a bunch of variations in those. But I chose the Budapest, and that's when black plays e5, and at a first glance it looks kind of strange, because after, for example, d takes e5, how is black supposed to win it back? But of course this is well known. If white takes, as in this game, black plays knight to g4, attacking the pawn right away. White develops naturally with knight f3, protecting. Knight c6, knight c3. Another move, of course, that white usually plays, or very often at least plays, is bishop f4, protecting over here. So let's say, for example, that after knight c6, white would play bishop f4, and then after, for example, bishop b4 check, and knight d2 or knight c3, either way. Then after queen e7, white has the option, if knight c3, to play queen to d5, sort of over protecting the pawn on e5. But that's also theory. But in that case, black plays f6, e takes f6, knight takes f6, pushing the queen away from d5 with the tempo, basically. So usually, but of course I've seen that happen many times, but for the most part white does not play d5 here. So in this game I'm going to play knight c3, I'll play bishop c5, of course threatening to take on f2, we play e3 to stop that, and here I took back the pawn with knight g takes e5. Of course I don't want to take with the knight c6, because the knight on g4 is not very well placed, so of course I'll take with the g. So knight takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop e2, and of course there is no way for white to win anything here. For example, if queen d5 here, then just d6 protects both the bishop and the knight. So bishop e2, castles, a5. a5 is a good move, because in this position white could potentially play either knight to e4 or knight to a4. If knight to a4, then there's no way really to save the bishop pair, because black obviously doesn't want to play a move like for example bishop e7 or d6. d6 will of course just block the pawn. e7 would also be a pretty bad alternative. But after a5, if white plays knight a4 here, then black can retreat all the way to a7, and also keeping this diagonal under fire, so to speak. And of course if knight a4 here, bishop a7, then of course white could play c5, but black also has the option to play d6 and open things up anyway. So h3, I didn't really see the point with the move h3, because that wasn't really a threat. I mean, I didn't really have any ideas. On the contrary, I would say that a move like h3 is just only weakest the king's side, as we will see a bit later on. King h8. Well, king h8, this case, for example, if I want to play f5, as I did in this game, you know, there's the threat, queen d5, picking up either the bishop or the knight. So king h8 is an okay move. e4. Well, I suppose his thinking was to open up the bishop over here, which doesn't really have much of a future right now. But of course you can also play b3 and fiend shadow the bishop all the way here. So e4, c6, stopping any knight d5 ideas, as well as queen d5, bishop f4, queen e7. I didn't want to play natural move like knight g6, because after knight g6 white can play bishop d6, and after that trade it's really difficult to get rid of the queen on d6. So queen e7, bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, queen c2. I don't really see the point of that move either, really. f5, bishop f3, d6, rook a to d1, bishop e6, b3, rook a to d8, knight a4, bishop a7, queen c3, queen f4. I don't want to trade queens here, obviously, when I have something going on here. On the king's side, queen d2. He obviously wants to get rid of my queen. Queen h4, queen e2, takes, queen takes e4, queen h6. Again, I don't want to trade. Queen c2, rook f8. Temporarily giving up an exchange because I saw that. Okay, black is better here, but I can easily draw in case something goes really wrong. G takes f3, queen takes h3, and also of course I have the idea. Okay, after queen e4, queen g3 check. He can't take, of course, because of the pin. So now we see how important this diagonal was in the end anyway. King h1, queen h3 check, king g1, rook f8, of course threatening to play rook f6 to g6, rook takes d6 is just a mistake because again a check on g3, he has to move, and now I'll just win the rook on d6. So now white is down a piece. I have two bishops and a rook. He has one rook and a knight. Easily won. Rook g1, rook f4, and of course the game is completely over now for white. Queen e2, rook h4, king g2, and here's an interesting move. Bishop h3 check. He can't take the bishop, and the only move is to go back. King h1, and now checkmate after bishop f1. Because he can't go back and the rook is on the h file. So let's take another look at the opening. The Budapest gambit. d4, knight f6, c4, e5, takes, knight g4, knight f3, knight c6, and as I mentioned earlier, there's the move bishop f4, bishop b4, and if knight c3, queen e7, then white can play queen to d5. And black can, for example, take on c3 check, b takes c3, and after, like I mentioned, f6, e takes f, knight takes f, and the queen goes back. d6, of course, protecting the pawn on c7, e3, castles, bishop e2, and so on. It's kind of difficult to say what kind of compensation black has for the pawn, but I think black. Usually, I mean, you don't see this kind of opening actually on top level. Only recently, actually, I think somebody played the Budapest and won the game, but it's kind of rare because it can be very difficult to play with as black, but it can also be a solid opening. I'll play this many times, and it's an interesting opening, but of course in a position like this, black has to prove that he has some compensation for the pawn, but a pawn is just a pawn. But of course, if a bunch of trades takes place and both players reach the end game, then black will just be down a pawn. So you know, a sacrifice is always a sacrifice. You just never know. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this clip about the Budapest, and I'll see you soon.